My name is Genesis, and I'm 58 years old. I thought I knew what heartbreak was until that Christmas night when I found my daughter Catherine sitting in the snow outside her husband's family home. She was wearing nothing but a thin dress, her lips blue, her hands frozen. Inside, through the warm, glowing windows, I could see her husband's family laughing and toasting with champagne. They had locked her out. I never liked Robert from the start, but Catherine was so in love. She was 25 when they met at a charity event downtown. He was handsome, well-dressed, came from money. The kind of man who opens doors and pulls out chairs and makes you feel like you're in a movie. Catherine had stars in her eyes when she talked about him, and I wanted to be happy for her. I really did. But there were little things that bothered me. The way Robert would correct her pronunciation at dinner. How he'd suggest she wear different clothes when they went to nice restaurants. Small things that seemed caring on the surface but felt controlling underneath. When I mentioned my concerns, Catherine would laugh and say I was being overprotective. "Mom, he just wants me to fit in with his world," she'd tell me. It's sweet. I never liked Robert from the start, but Jessica was so in love. She was 25 when they met at a charity event downtown. He was handsome, well-dressed, came from money. The kind of man who opens doors and pulls out chairs and makes you feel like you're in a movie. Jessica had stars in her eyes when she talked about him, and I wanted to be happy for her. I really did. But there were little things that bothered me. The way Robert would correct her pronunciation at dinner. How he'd suggest she wear different clothes when they went to nice restaurants. Small things that seemed caring on the surface but felt controlling underneath. When I mentioned my concerns, Jessica would laugh and say I was being overprotective. "Mom, he just wants me to fit in with his world," she'd tell me. It's sweet. His world. That should have been my first red flag. Robert's family lived in one of those old mansions on the north side of town. Big iron gates, circular driveway, the kind of place that makes you feel small just walking up to the front door. His mother Eleanor was all polite smiles and cold eyes. His father Thomas barely acknowledged Jessica existed. They were old money, the kind of people who think being wealthy for 3 generations makes them better than everyone else. The first time Robert brought Jessica to meet them, she came home crying. Not sobbing, just quiet tears that she tried to hide from me. When I asked what happened, she said Eleanor had asked her about her background, what her father did for work, where she went to school, what kind of family she came from. Jessica told me it felt like a job interview she was failing. "Maybe they're just protective of him," Jessica said, making excuses even then. "They want to make sure I'm good enough for their son." But I could see it in her eyes. She was starting to believe she wasn't. The wedding was beautiful, I'll give them that. Eleanor spared no expense, though she made it clear every step of the way that she was in charge. Jessica wanted wildflowers in her bouquet, but Eleanor insisted on roses. Jessica wanted her cousin to sing, but Eleanor hired a professional. Every decision Jessica made got quietly overruled, and Robert just went along with whatever his mother wanted. I watched my daughter shrink a little more each day during those wedding preparations. She stopped expressing opinions, stopped making suggestions. When I tried to talk to her about it, she'd say she was just trying to keep the peace. "It's their money, Mom. And it's just one day." But it wasn't just one day. It was the beginning of Jessica learning that her voice didn't matter in that family. After the honeymoon, Jessica moved into the guest house on Robert's family property. It was supposed to be temporary, just until they found their own place. But months turned into a year, and they were still there. Eleanor would drop by unannounced to help with decorating. She'd rearrange Jessica's furniture, replace her picture frames with more appropriate ones, suggest that Jessica's books might be better stored in boxes. Jessica started coming to visit me less and less. When she did, she seemed tired all the time, worried. She'd lost weight, and there were dark circles under her eyes. But whenever I asked if everything was okay, she'd force a smile and say she was just adjusting to married life. Then came the pregnancy. Jessica was so happy when she found out she was expecting. She called me crying tears of joy, saying she couldn't wait to tell Robert and his family. This was going to change everything, she said. Now she'd really be part of the family. I was excited too, but worried about how Eleanor would react. Would she try to control this too? Would she have opinions about how Jessica should raise the baby? I never got to find out. Jessica lost the baby at 12 weeks. She called me from the hospital, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. Robert was there with her, and so was Eleanor. But when I arrived, I found Jessica alone in the room. Robert and his mother were in the hallway, talking in low voices about trying again soon, and these things happen for a reason. I held my daughter while she grieved, and I watched Robert's family treat her loss like it was an inconvenience. Eleanor brought her books about moving forward and accepting God's plan. Thomas patted her shoulder awkwardly and said she was young. There would be other chances. Even Robert seemed more concerned about how his parents were handling the news than how his wife was coping with the loss. Jessica blamed herself. She was convinced she'd done something wrong, eaten something wrong, thought something wrong. Eleanor didn't help matters by suggesting that Jessica's stress levels might have been a factor, that maybe if she'd been more relaxed, more positive, things might have been different. I wanted to shake that woman until her teeth rattled. After the miscarriage, Jessica became a ghost of herself. She threw herself into trying to be the perfect daughter-in-law, as if that could somehow make up for losing the baby. She took cooking classes to learn Eleanor's family recipes. She joined the country club committees Eleanor suggested. She even started going to their church, though she'd never been particularly religious before. Nothing she did was good enough. Eleanor would praise her cooking, then suggest little improvements. She'd thank her for helping with the charity events, then redo all her work. She'd compliment her outfits, then mention that certain colors were more flattering. Death by 1,000 small cuts. And Robert let it happen. Worse than that, he started joining in. He'd correct Jessica's grammar at dinner parties. He'd apologize to his parents for her mistakes before she even knew she'd made them. He'd explain away her opinions as if she were a child who didn't understand how the adult world worked. I watched my confident, smart, funny daughter disappear piece by piece. The breaking point came at Thanksgiving. Jessica had been planning the meal for weeks, trying to make everything perfect. She'd practiced Eleanor's stuffing recipe a dozen times, ordered the exact brand of cranberry sauce Thomas preferred, even bought new china because Eleanor mentioned that Jessica's everyday dishes weren't really appropriate for holidays. I arrived early to help and found Jessica having a panic attack in the kitchen. She was hyperventilating, convinced she'd ruined the turkey because it was taking longer to cook than expected. I tried to calm her down, told her the food would be fine, but she was beyond reason. "They're going to be so disappointed," she kept saying. "Eleanor specifically told me how Thomas likes his turkey, and if it's dry, he won't eat it, and then Eleanor will know I can't even cook a simple meal." When the family arrived for dinner, the turkey was perfect. The whole meal was perfect, but Eleanor still found things to criticize. The gravy was a little thin. The potatoes could have used more salt. The table setting was lovely, though next time maybe Jessica could remember that the salad fork goes on the outside. Jessica apologized for everything. She promised to do better next time. She thanked them for their patience with her learning curve. I wanted to scream. But the worst part was watching Robert. He didn't defend her. He didn't tell his mother to back off. He just sat there nodding along, sometimes even adding his own suggestions for how Jessica could improve next time. After dinner, while Jessica was cleaning up, I heard Eleanor talking to Thomas in the next room. She was saying that she worried Jessica wasn't quite ready for the responsibilities of being part of their family, that maybe she needed more time to mature, to understand their expectations. "She tries so hard," Eleanor said in that fake, sympathetic voice. "But trying isn't really enough, is it?" That night, Jessica came to stay with me. She said she needed a break, just for a few days. But when she walked into my house, she looked so small and broken that I wanted to lock the door and never let her go back. We talked all night, really talked, for the first time in months. Jessica told me how she felt like she was walking on eggshells all the time, never knowing what would set off another round of criticism. How Robert had started treating her like she was stupid, explaining things to her that she already knew, making decisions without consulting her. "I don't know who I am anymore, Mom," she whispered. "I used to be smart. I used to have opinions. Now I can't even decide what to wear without worrying about whether Eleanor will approve." I begged her to leave, told her she could stay with me as long as she needed, that we'd figure everything out together. But she shook her head. "I made vows," she said. "For better or worse. Maybe this is just the worst part, and it'll get better." She went back to Robert the next day. Things didn't get better. They got worse. Robert started working longer hours, leaving Jessica alone with his parents more often. Eleanor began dropping by daily, always with some new way Jessica could improve herself. She brought her articles about proper etiquette, books about managing a household, brochures for classes that might help Jessica become more well-rounded. Jessica tried everything. She took the classes, read the books, followed every suggestion, but it was never enough. There was always something else she needed to work on, some other way she was falling short of Eleanor's expectations. The phone calls to me became less frequent. When Jessica did call, she sounded tired and distant. She'd ask about my day, tell me everything was fine, then hang up quickly. I could feel her slipping away from me, disappearing into this family that was slowly erasing who she was. I tried to visit, but there was always a reason why it wasn't a good time. Robert's parents were there, or they had plans, or Jessica was taking another one of Eleanor's improvement classes. When I did manage to see her, she was always perfectly dressed, perfectly made up, perfectly polite, but she wasn't my Jessica anymore. Then came Christmas. Robert's family always had a big Christmas dinner. Extended family, business associates, important people from their social circle. It was the kind of event Eleanor loved to orchestrate, showing off their perfect home and perfect life. Jessica had been preparing for weeks. She'd helped plan the menu, decorated the house, bought gifts for everyone. She'd even lost more weight, trying to fit into a dress Eleanor had suggested would be more flattering. I wasn't invited to the dinner. That shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. Jessica had asked if I could come, but Eleanor explained that they had limited space and the guest list was already set. Family and close friends only. Apparently, I didn't qualify as either. Jessica called me that morning, Christmas Day. She sounded nervous, almost panicked. "I think I made a mistake with the centerpieces," she said. "Eleanor wanted red and gold, but I used red and green. She's going to hate it." "Honey, it's Christmas," I said. "Red and green are Christmas colors." But she specifically said red and gold. She always says what she means. I should have listened better. I could hear the fear in her voice, and it broke my heart. "Jessica, you're a grown woman. You don't need her permission to choose Christmas decorations." There was silence on the other end of the line. "I have to go, Mom. The guests will be arriving soon." That was the last time I spoke to her that day. Around 8 o'clock that evening, I was feeling restless, lonely. I decided to drive by Robert's house, maybe just to see the Christmas lights, maybe to feel a little closer to Jessica on a day when we should have been together. What I saw when I pulled up to their house will haunt me for the rest of my life. Jessica was sitting on the front steps in the snow. She was wearing a thin red dress, no coat, no gloves. Her shoulders were shaking, and I couldn't tell if it was from crying or from the cold. Probably both. Through the big front windows, I could see the Christmas party in full swing. People in expensive clothes holding wine glasses, laughing and talking. The house was warm and bright and full of life, and my daughter was locked outside in the snow. I parked and ran to her. Her lips were blue, her hands were like ice. She was barely conscious, hypothermic and in shock. "Jessica, honey, what happened? Why are you out here?" She looked at me with dull eyes, like she wasn't quite sure who I was. "I ruined dinner," she whispered. "The centerpieces were wrong." Eleanor was so upset. Robert said I needed to think about what I'd done. I wrapped my coat around her and helped her to my car. She was shaking so hard she could barely walk. "Did they lock you out?" She nodded, like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Robert said I could come back in when I was ready to apologize properly. But I don't know what I did wrong. I tried so hard, Mom. I tried so hard to get it right. I got Jessica into my car with the heater running. Then I marched up to that front door and pounded on it until Robert answered. He looked annoyed to see me, like I was interrupting something important. "Genesis, what are you doing here?" "I'm here for my daughter, who I found sitting in the snow outside your house." What kind of man leaves his wife outside in freezing weather? Jessica needed some time to think about her behavior tonight. She embarrassed my family in front of our guests. She embarrassed them by using the wrong colored ribbon on a Christmas centerpiece. Robert's face hardened. "You don't understand the situation. Jessica has been struggling to adapt to our family's expectations. My mother has been very patient with her, but tonight she really crossed a line. What line? What could she possibly have done to deserve being locked out of her own home on Christmas? That's when Eleanor appeared behind Robert, her face a mask of fake concern. Oh, Genesis, I'm so sorry you got caught up in this. Jessica had a bit of a meltdown at dinner. She became very emotional about some feedback I gave her, and she said some things that were quite hurtful. Robert thought it would be best if she had some time to cool down. Some time to cool down? She was hypothermic. Well, we didn't expect her to just sit there. We thought she'd go for a walk or something, then come back when she was ready to discuss this, like an adult. I looked at these two people, these monsters who had systematically destroyed my daughter's self-worth over 3 years of marriage, and I felt a rage I didn't know I was capable of. You people are sick. You've spent years tearing her down, making her feel worthless, and now you've literally left her out in the cold. This ends now. I turned and walked back to my car, where Jessica was still shaking despite the heater running full blast. I drove straight to the hospital. Jessica was treated for mild hypothermia and exhaustion. The doctor asked how she'd gotten so cold, and when I explained, he looked horrified. He wanted to call the police, but Jessica begged him not to. She was still protecting them, still making excuses. They didn't mean for me to get so cold, she said. I should have knocked on the door sooner. It took 3 days in my house, wrapped in blankets and drinking hot soup, before Jessica started to see clearly what had happened to her. We talked for hours about gaslighting, about emotional abuse, about how abusers slowly chip away at your reality until you don't trust your own perceptions anymore. She cried for all the versions of herself she'd lost, trying to become someone Eleanor could accept. She mourned the woman she'd been before she met Robert, the one who had opinions and dreams, and wasn't afraid to take up space in the world. I can't believe I let them do this to me, she said. They didn't let you choose, I told her. They were experts at this. They knew exactly how to make you doubt yourself. Getting Jessica away from Robert and his family wasn't easy. They tried everything to get her back. Robert showed up at my house with flowers, claiming he'd been trying to protect Jessica from his mother's criticism, and he was sorry he'd handled it wrong. Eleanor called crying, saying she'd only ever wanted to help Jessica become the best version of herself. But Jessica had finally seen through their manipulation. She filed for divorce, and with the help of a good lawyer, she was able to prove a pattern of emotional abuse. The judge was particularly appalled by the Christmas incident, which he called unconscionable cruelty. Robert fought the divorce, claiming Jessica was having some kind of breakdown and wasn't thinking clearly. His family hired expensive lawyers who tried to paint Jessica as unstable, ungrateful, and vindictive. They claimed she was making false accusations to get a better settlement. But Jessica had found her voice again. In court, she spoke clearly and calmly about 3 years of systematic emotional abuse. She had kept a journal during the worst of it, documenting Eleanor's daily criticisms and Robert's increasing coldness. She had photos of herself from before the marriage and during it, showing her dramatic weight loss and the fear that had crept into her eyes. The judge saw right through Robert and his family's lies. It's been 2 years now since that Christmas night. Jessica lives in her own apartment across town. She's back in school, getting her master's degree in social work. She wants to help other women who've been through what she experienced. She's gained back the weight she lost, and more importantly, she's gained back herself. She laughs again. She has opinions again. She takes up space in the world again. She still has hard days. Sometimes she'll call me crying because she ran into Eleanor at the grocery store, or because she heard Robert got remarried and she feels sorry for his new wife. The effects of emotional abuse don't just disappear overnight, but she's healing. And she's helping other women heal too through her volunteer work at the women's shelter. We spend every Christmas together now, just the two of us. We make too much food and watch old movies and stay up too late talking. It's not fancy like Eleanor's Christmas dinners, but it's full of love and warmth and acceptance. Last Christmas, Jessica gave me a card that said, "Thank you for finding me in the snow and bringing me home." I keep it on my refrigerator, and every time I see it, I remember that sometimes the most important thing we can do for the people we love is refuse to let them disappear. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in Jessica's story, please know that you deserve better. You deserve to be valued for who you are, not criticized for who you're not. You deserve warmth and acceptance, not cold shoulders and conditional love. And if you're a mother watching your child fade away in a toxic relationship, don't give up. Sometimes we have to be the voice they've lost until they find it again.